Bear with me. There we go. Yay. All right, we got it in there. We're straight-ish. We're back. Just did a review of the Boker that arrived today. Check that one out. It's this little guy right here. Very nice little knife. And now we're going to look at a Rough Ryder Reserve. By the way, hit like, hit subscribe, make comments. You know, as long as they're not hurtful, go ahead, make some comments. We got a Rough Ryder Reserve. This is the 012. It's a Gunstock pattern, traditional lockback. I think it's in blue denim micarta. Sounds tasty. Let's take a look. So can I open this without massacring the box? You know what? Fuck it. I don't care. I like that they do put these in some nice tins. This is the Rough Ryder Reserved. So these do have a good warranty. They're D2 steel. They are made in China. Deal with it. They're good knives. Don't care. If you hate China, save it. I don't have a prejudice against China. I don't like their government. I think we'd all agree on that. Comes a little tasty snack you can eat if you want. And it's actually a really nice tin. I mean, like your Jack Wolf and other knives come in a nice tin like that. Your GECs come in a nice tin. So it's nice. I like it. I find it pleasing. So what do we got? Got a little do-rag thing here. Nah, it's a microfiber. Rough Ryder Reserve. Always built by hand and backed for life. Nice. We got a wax paper wrapper. Let's see if this lives up to the hype that I had in my head after looking at it online. So, Rough Ryders. Got some other Rough Ryders here we'll compare to. I've got a bunch of Rough Ryders. I just grabbed a couple that maybe haven't been in videos recently. I've got their Barlow in a raw yellow micarta. Beautiful little knife. Kind of small, but just a nice little gentleman's knife. That pattern goes back, I don't know, 1800s? Mid-1800s, the Barlow. And then I've got their Easy Open Tear Jerk, which is kind of like a modified, almost like it's similar to a Barlow. At least the blade's very similar. You've got a very similar blade. Your bolster isn't as long. I mean, typically for it to be a Barlow, you got the long bolster. But I have seen variations that are, we'll just call this Barlow-ish. But it's a two-blade. You've got your drop point, spear point. I'm not sure what you'd call that. It's kind of a goofy shape. And then on the other side, you've got more of your Wharncliffe or sheep's foot. I never knew that. I always forget how to tell the difference. I think that's a Wharncliffe. Maybe when it's a long tapered point like that, that's the Wharncliffe. And when it's more of like the cleaver style, that's considered a sheep's foot. Either way, here's what it is. Also D2, made in China, made very well. That's with black micarta. Really well done. They make great knives. I have nothing negative to say about Rough Ryder Reserve. They make a quality product at a great price, and it's better than Case. And you know, if you want an American-made knife that's that quality, or you want to beat it, there really isn't anything in the American-made that quality of that style knife. You basically have to step up to the GECs, and instead of $50, you're paying $180 to $200. So there's a lot of value here. Talked about that before, where America's very good at, we can do quality. We make some fantastic knives, but you pay through the nose for them. And then we have cheap knives, but we don't have, they're just getting some of that polish, that jeweler's rouge they use. Some of that's down in the grooves, so just wiping that out. A little bit up there. And you've got, you got cheap knives in the US, but you don't have value knives. There's very few knives that are made in the US materials that are in that $35 to $55 or $60 range that are actually well built and quality. You just don't make them. We can't afford to, is really what it comes down to. So this uses a Gunstock pattern, which is very similar to my Jack Wolf Gunslinger. And now that I'm talking through this, I really should have had that out to compare here. But, oh well, you can go see my video on that. One of my favorite knives in my entire collection, and very, very cool. But we've got a similar design, although instead of a liner lock, we've got a back lock. It does use micarta, stainless steel bolsters. We'll go into the details here. Transitions, really good. You don't feel the transition to the micarta. You feel those little ribs that they groove, machined into the bolsters, But the transitions themselves, no proud pins, perfectly flush. The shield, really nicely done. Better than the Bokers, which is where they drill a kind of a shallow hole and then glue that in. They do a better job here. That's seamless. You don't even feel the transition at all. Blade, awesome. No rocking or wobbling. Tiny bit of blade flex, although not much because it's a fairly stiff, thick blade. Not a super tight spring, but again, on lockbacks, you don't need that. On a knife that doesn't lock, if you don't want to, you want a strong spring so that, you don't want it to be floppy and worry about if you're putting a little bit too much pressure, it's going to close on your hand and you're going to cut the shit out of your fingers. Yeah, they do put a half stop here to help with that. But, when you have a lockback, you don't need a strong spring. You just need a little bit so you get it started and boom. This is interesting because it has a half stop on a lockback. So that's interesting. So you unlock it, you got a half stop, and if you look down in there, you have a pin. So you don't have to worry about any kind of blade wrap or this blade contacting any kind of metal in there, because when that closes, it hits the blade stop and you don't get any over travel. I wouldn't expect much over travel anyway with a spring like that, but it's just a nice touch. I like that they do that. They put those in on a lot of the Rough Riders so that you do not get any kind of blade wrap. There's one in there on the Barlow because it's got a fairly stiff little spring. That snaps home with authority, and you don't want that blade dinging into that hump there where the back spring is, where that rivet goes in. So you get the blade stop. I don't know why case and other knives don't do that. Some of my Bokers don't do that. And as a result, I kept closing the blades and they were getting dings in the blade. So let's open this up. The action is nice and smooth. I like that the blade centering, I'm going to call that 50-50. It's perfect. That is as good as you're going to get on a knife out of the box. Nice, easy action. Put a drop of oil in there and let it work its way in and all that stuff, but it's got phosphor bronze washers in there. We are looking at a blade that is about 3 1/4, and then it's got the cutting edge is about 2 7/8. So you've got a nice sharpening choil, ricasso, whatever. There, it's a standard kind of a clip point. That's a really nice little shape. I like that the back edge here, there's no hard edges, so when you grip it, there's not really a corner. It's rounded enough that that corner doesn't dig into my hand uncomfortably. Tiny bit of rock forward and back. I mean, when I say tiny, I mean really tiny. I can feel just a little bit of wiggle, but I mean, shit. A lot of my knives don't have that. It is unusual. Most of the knives I have don't have front to back rock with the lockback, but it's a very stiff spring. Like that is not going to come undone. That's really nice. That will give a nice secure lockup, even if it's got that little wiggle. If you have like a locking, like the liner lock versions of some of the larger Swiss Army knives, you can move the blade like 2 degrees. Like this doesn't, it's just a tiny, tiny bit. I didn't have that on the Boker. No forward back rocking. We'll do a side comparison between the two. Weighs just a little bit more, but barely. I still think you're into the 3 ounce range. But it is to me, this is just a little bit bigger in the hand, but it is skinnier up here. So it feels a little more delicate in a way. This is shorter, but a little meatier here. So, it'll kind of come down to whatever your personal preferences and your hand size is. Do a quick sharpness test. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Even right out to the tip. Just the tip. Push test. Boom. 2 traditional under $50 lockbacks in a row with hair popping edges. Does a nice push test. Shaves paper. Good lockup. It's not perfect. It's fine. I've had Bucks and other knives that, Merck and made that didn't, have any better of a lockup. I'm not going to say that that's up there with my best knives, but I mean, again, I'm looking for something here. It's a $50 knife. I'm expecting to find something wrong or some quarter cut. And there really isn't. The micarta, the execution. I mean, look at the back of the knife here. Look at the polish. Look at the brass liners. Everything is lined up. You don't have any wonky gaps or anything in there. That's a really nice knife. And it fits that role of being, You know, if you like traditional knives, look, I love my GECs. I love this little guy that's got basically a Stockman blade pattern, right? You got your well, instead of a clip point, you do have that. I mean, it's a mixture almost like of a Stockman. It's not a canoe because it's not bowed that way. You know, I don't know what you would even call this, other than it's a really, really fantastic knife. I like my GEC, my Remington. They made the Remington Bullet knife that year. But you know, I don't carry these as much because they're carbon steel. So if it's in your pocket and sweaty, you got to make sure you keep wiping them down with an oily rag because it is 1095 hard carbon steel, so it will rust pretty easily. And that's where I like D2. It is a bit more forgiving in that regard. But if you want something classy, if you're a classy guy like me, and you want something gentlemanly, but you know, it's got enough of a blade to get some work done, but you got that little bit of additional safety of having the lockback without having to go into the tactical. And I love my Spydercos. I have a bunch of, you know, more modern tactical style knives, but there are times where, you know, I don't know if you're in the store or the office or something like that. I mean, some offices are going to get crazy because they just have a zero tolerance policy on any kind of weapon or knife or tool or whatever. But most places, if I was having to open, someone's like, hey, I got to open a box, and you pull out a little Swiss Army knife, or you pull out a little guy like this, and it looks like something like Granddad had in their pocket, people don't tend to give it as much mind as if you're like, and you pull out a 3.5-inch blade Spyderco that's got this gnarly tactical looking look. You know, it looks like a weapon. We're knife guys. We know it's a tool. But, you know, when you're dealing with the public and people that aren't educated on things, just like guns or anything else, when you're dealing with people who aren't educated on those things, you know, to them, perception is reality. So you don't want to land yourself in trouble or be asked to leave because you're brandishing a weapon and all you're trying to do is, you know, cut open a package or something. You're at a restaurant and it's your birthday dinner and someone brought you a package and it was taped shut and you're like, all right, let me open that. And all of a sudden, sir, we have a no weapons policy. It's like, oh, okay, you're going to take away my steak knife too? So I like this. I like this a lot. That's a really nice action. I like the blade on it a little bit better. I mean, it's got a good bit more cutting edge. They're both D2 steel. But I would say, you know, the Boker's very nice. The Boker, I think, looks maybe a little bit more traditional. But to me, the Rough Rider at the same price feels a little bit more substantial. I think the fit and finish on them is pretty much on par. They're both polished really nice. They don't have any weird gaps. They're both done very, very well. I wouldn't mind if this one was just a little bit bigger. It's big enough for me to use, but here I can get a whole hand on it easily without me having to feel like I'm trying to pinch my fingers together that way, like close together. Here, this is kind of like an Elementum. I can get my hand on it, but it's just, it doesn't fill my hand as nicely. I like the Gunstock pattern. I love it on my Jack Wolf. It's a little more slender up here where you want to choke up, but then it flares out and it gets a little wider back here on the meat of your palm. Something about that just feels a little bit more like I'm ready to use it. I can make do with any of these, right? This is me nitpicking. But overall, that Rough Rider Reserve, I've yet to buy a Rough Rider Reserve that was not pretty much perfect or nearly perfect or almost fantastic right out of the box. They are very, very well made. Now, there are regular Rough Riders, and they are, you know, $12 to $25 knives. And you kind of get what you pay for, but if your kid just needs a pocket knife and you know they're going to chip the blade or do something stupid with it or lose it, you don't want to give them something expensive. Rough Riders have a place in the market. Some people just want a cheap, traditional, old school looking pocket knife and they just want to spend 25 bucks. Boom, Rough Rider. They got you covered. You're not going to get a GEC or a good case or anything like that. But when you step up to the Rough Rider Reserves, and those tend to be in the $45 to $65 range, and some of them are starting to creep up. But, you know, it's inflation. Everything's more money right now. I like that. That is a nice, good size. If you don't want a big, full-size knife, you want something traditional, safety of a lock in case you had to stab into something. I won't say someone, but something. You got that added safety. Really nice action, blade stop. What is not to like? other than some people's prejudice towards anything that is connected to China. If you remove that from the equation, you would have to conclude that's a fantastic knife. And what did I pay for this one? Let's see, hold on my other page here. What did I pay for this guy? I paid $46.87. So I paid 12 cents less for the Rough Rider than I did for the Boker. Now they're both Chinese knives, but for under $100, I got two really nice, beautiful, classy, sharp as hell, well executed lockbacks. How do you beat that? Where would I go in America and buy American-made knives with D2 and that level of polish and fit and finish? Where would I get? I'd have a hard time finding one. If I found a good case, my Hunter lockback was $100. That would be an exception. I don't know of any other US-made knives sub 100 that give you this level of fit and finish with these materials. And the case ones, you have to pick through to find a good one. So a lot of them aren't. They got lots of blade wobble and the pins are proud and they miscut and ground something there. So you have like a sharp edge you got to knock off. I've never had to do that with a Boker or a Rough Rider Reserve. They've all been pretty much perfect. And this one is added to the list. And I've had now, 16 of them? You say, well, you got lucky. I'm not the kind of person that gets lucky 16 times in a row. I'm just not, trust me. I'm the one where there's a knife that has a stellar reputation, that has never anybody ever complained, and I'm the one that'll get 3 broken ones in a row. That's me, I'm that guy. So for me to get all those good ones and never have a problem, fantastic, man. I love Rough Rider Reserve. And they keep coming out with new patterns and new designs, and I love it because it's a way for people to buy quality knives. And you know what? You have a knife like this, you have some of the Chinese-made Bokers, and then you go, you know what? I really like Boker. Maybe I should invest in the $220 Cattleman, which is what I did. I had some of the cheaper Bokers, and I was like, you know what? I want one of the Solingen ones. I want to see if the German ones are really, all they're cracked up to be. And they're nicer. It's not 4.5 times the price nicer, but they are very nice knives. But you get one of the Chinese Bokers and go watch my video on that. This may even be made by the same damn company that's cranking these all out for under different labels, because it's really well done. The grinds look the same, the polish looks the same, the fit and finish, the pins. There's a lot of similarities here. Like it or not, China's making good things. And these two knives are two great examples. And every time I look at Rough Rider, I see a new model coming out. They're coming out with new patterns and this and that. I would like to have more of these. I'd love to have more GECs. Problem is you can't ever find the goddamn things. Everybody buys them up like Beanie Babies because they collect them. I actually like carrying them. That's why I've got some scratches on the back and, things like that. I don't, I have more knives than I can reasonably use, but I just get up that day and I'm like, this is the one I'm gonna play with today. And I'll grab this one, throw it in my pocket, and I throw change in there later and the quarter scratches it up a little, whatever. I'm not doing these for collecting for, the purpose of collecting. I just like them and I'm going to use them at some point, and I kind of go through a rotation, some more than others. I would like more knives like this. I don't mind spending $150 to $200 on pocket knives, but I can't get my hands on these. So these companies step up and say, look, I'll give you a knife that's, yeah, those are better, but they're not 4 times better. And ultimately, if I do scratch one of those up or snap the tip or I lose one or it gets stolen, I'm going to be much more pissed that I lost my $200 knife that I don't know if I can even replace because nobody has them. They run a batch of a pattern and maybe they crank out 500 of them and everyone buys them the next day and then they're gone. You may not see another one for years. That's the problem with the nice American knives if people really want them and gobble them up. Meanwhile, some guys in China are loading these into a CNC machine and cranking them out, and I can always get my hands on one. That, as a consumer, I see that as a benefit. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the new Rough Rider Reserve. Like it, gonna carry it today. Or will I carry the Boker? I don't know, we'll find out. But anyway, if you like this stuff, stick around. We got more stuff coming, folks.